I have words up there, yes. So, any reaction, any statement you want to make after your first small group?
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Praise Yahweh. So, here goes. So, the second section, again, we're following that yellow page, or what kind of color you have. We're going to look at what Brueggemann called Psalms of Disorientation. Primarily, they're Psalms of Lament. That's the old phrase for them. The problem with the word lament is that it puts an emphasis on one part of a process. It's kind of like what we do with the sacrament of reconciliation. When you call it confession, you're focusing on one part of it to name the whole thing. We do that a lot, but this part names the whole thing to call it confession. But lament is one part of a process. Lament is different than complaining or whining. Lament comes out of a worldview that, God, you're in charge. But right now, things don't seem to look like you're in charge. So I'm saying, hey, wake up. Or, hey, come to our aid. Or in some sense, it comes out of trust. I suspect good complaints do the same thing. When we complain to an authority, our boss, our parent, we trust that by saying, well, he touched me first. By explaining things, the authority will see it our way. Not all complaints or human beings are that way, though, are they? Sometimes we just complain because we want to pass around ill feeling. I'm not happy. Nobody should be happy. So what I put on the board is the Lament Psalm, or the Psalm of Disorientation, has a number of things in its form. First, a call to God, like, oh God, or hey you, okay? And then comes the complaint. I am hassled, I am sick, I am close to death, whatever. Then comes the petition. Help me, heal me, be my strength, bring us from conflict to peace. And then there will sometimes be a motivation. Why should God do this? Now, it's a little bit prideful. It sounds prideful to us, but you will find it in the Old Testament. God, do this because we're praising you. And if you don't do this for us, who's going to praise you? If you don't do what you pledged to do, no one's going to honor you. We're your people. So the motive, now you won't see it in every psalm, but you'll see it in some psalms. It's kind of like an assumption, I think a playful assumption that God, you and I, we've got a deal here. And if you do this for us, we will praise you. And then there will often be, but not always, an expression of trust. Or even a word of gratitude. Scholars sometimes propose that this was done in two pieces. This was done first, and then after the situation changed, then would come. But the expressions of trust are usually so short, it's kind of like, why would you even gather it again? So my assumption is that most of the time, the complainer does come out of faith and is so assured that his prayer will be answered that he shows that he prays or calls out not out of distrust, but out of confidence. There's a ton of these. About half of the Psalms are Psalms of Lament. If you look at the yellow page, you see them broken up into subcategories. A cursing psalm is a kind of lament. A penitential psalm is a kind of lament. And psalms of confidence are a kind of lament. So this whole section is on, in a grand sense, is on lament psalm. Okay?
So, the one assignment was Psalm 6.
Yes.
And so there, he is saying, for in death there is no remembrance of you. In Sheol, who can give you praise? Is that something like what just...
that's kind of like this, why God should do a good deed for me. Because if you let me die, who's going to praise you? Okay? Let's look at Psalm 3. Very brief. We've got to get the hang of this. Like we did with Psalm 117 and the hymns. Okay? Oh Lord, how many are my foes? So, oh Lord, how many are my foes? Okay? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of me, there is no help for him in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory, the lifter of my head. I cry aloud to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy hill. So that's the implied petition. I lie down and sleep. I wake again, for the Lord sustains me. I am not afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me round about. So this is an expression of trust. And then what's appended to it is actually a call for victory. Arise, Lord. Deliver me, my God. For you smite all my enemies on the cheek, and you break the teeth of the wicked. Deliverance belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be upon your people. So when I lay out this pattern, it's not rigidly a pattern, but you'll see these aspects to it, these elements of it. There's an address and complaint. There's a confession of trust, verses 3 to 6 and 8, and then there's the petition, is verse 7. Arise, Lord, deliver me, my God, for you smite all my enemies on the cheek. Okay? Psalm 74. Laments come in two flavors, individual laments and communal laments. Okay, which is just the only way of subdividing a very big category. Individual laments have the first person singular, and a communal lament is plural, we, not I. Psalm 74 is a community lament. And we're going to read it because I want you to see an example of a psalm that probably was written after the destruction of the temple, that is after the exile, or during the exile. O God, why do you cast us off forever? Why does your anger smoke against the sheep of your pasture? Remember your congregation, which you have gotten of old, which you have redeemed to be the tribe of your heritage. Remember Mount Zion, where you have dwelt. Direct your steps to the perpetual ruins. The enemy has destroyed everything in the sanctuary. Now, there are other times when, the temple was beaten up, or the northern tribes, of course, lost their shrine early. Shiloh was destroyed before David. So there are examples of earlier shrines, but my tendency is to read this as a psalm composed after the destruction of the temple in 587. Your foes have roared in the midst of your holy place. Notice, your foes. The psalmist identifies Israel's enemies as God's enemies. Your foes. They set up their own signs, their standards. At the upper entrance, they hacked the wooden trellis with axes, and then all its carved wood they broke down with hatchets and hammers. They set your sanctuary on fire. To the ground they desecrated the dwelling place of your name. They said to themselves, we will utterly subdue them. They burned all the meeting places of God in the land. We do not see our signs. There is no longer any prophet, and there is none among us who knows how long. In the middle of this is a poem about creation. Look at verse 12. To say, okay, God, things are a mess, but, verse 12, God, my King, is from of old, working salvation in the midst of the earth. You did divide the sea by your midst. You did break the heads of the dragons on the waters. You did crush the heads of Leviathan. You have given them as food for the creatures of the wilderness. You did cleave open springs and brooks. You did dry up overflowing streams. And then verse 18. Remember this, Lord, how the enemy scoffs and an impious people reviles your name. Do not deliver the soul of your dove to the wild beasts. Do not forget the life of your poor forever. Have regard for your covenant, for the dark places of the land are full of the habitations of violence. Let not the downtrodden be put to shame. Let the poor and needy praise your name. Arise, Lord, plead your cause. Remember how the impious scoff at you all the day. Do not forget the clamor of your foes, the uproar of your adversaries, which goes up continually. Who here can, it seems that we've got two different things going on here. Can you write a script that explains what's going on in the narrative of the psalm? Why the creation stuff in the middle?
Well, you did it once, you can do it again.
You did what once?
Make us.
Create, yeah. And bring us out of chaos.
Right.
Okay? So, again, so the themes of creation and redemption, they're different, but Israel sees them as two acts. Remember, particularly if you think of the Babylonian story of creation, it's a battle against other forces. That's this weird stuff about the Leviathan, verse 14. There is no story like this in the creation story of Genesis. Huh? But the background story that is before the creation story of Israel, think again about the Babylonian story. Creation is a battle between different forces. And in one story, it was a dragon-y sort of thing called Leviathan or Lotan. And so even though that's not their story in the Bible, this psalm makes a reference to a different creation story where it's a battle between ogres, monsters, and the forces of God. Okay? So yes, so he starts out by saying, in very concrete language, how the enemy has torn the temple, burned the doors, shredded them, hauled off the good stuff. And then, you, God, you created things in the beginning. You brought order out of chaos. You put chaos in its place. You control, you build boundaries that keep bad things in bad territory. So the implication is, wake now, wake from your sleep, and do for us again what you did once at the beginning. So the link between chaos and trouble in people's lives. Psalm 88. I think you may have looked at it last time. I don't remember. If you're having a Debbie Downer day, this is the psalm to pray. There is no inkling of hope. There's no expression of trust. It's really sad. Lord my God, I call for help by day. I cry out in the night before you. For my soul is full of troubles. My life draws near to Sheol. I am reckoned among those who go down to the pit. I am a man who has no strength, like one forsaken among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, like those whom you do remember no more. They are cut off from your hand. This is the kind of example that I've said earlier to you, through most of the Old Testament, there is no belief in a life beyond this life. Okay? Again, you can't say that nobody had a belief about life beyond this life, but it's very hard to find any evidence of it. Maybe a little bit here, a little bit there, not until Maccabees and Daniel. But you get a sense here that the living complainer is talking about that I should be as good as dead. Things are so bad, it's just as well that I be dead. Verse 9, every day I call upon you, Lord. I spread out my hands to you. Do you work wonders for the dead? Do the shades rise up to praise you? What's the answer to those questions? No. So if you don't do something, I'm going to join them in being dead and not being able to praise you. Is your steadfast love declared in the grave, or the faithfulness in Abaddon? Are your wonders known in the darkness, or your saving help in the land of forgetfulness? But I, Lord, cry to you. In the morning my prayer comes before you. Lord, why do you cast me off? Why do you hide your face from me? Afflicted and close to death from my youth, I suffer your terrors, I am helpless. Your wrath has swept over me. Thy dread assaults destroy me. They surround me like a flood all day long. They close in upon me together. You have cast lover and friend to shun me. You have caused lover and friend to shun me. My one companion is darkness. Oh, nice, huh? Could be worse. Psalm 137. 137. We did 136. Remember we sang that this morning. 137. You know this, but now you know history, and you know enough about a community lament to see them a little differently, maybe. By the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and wept when we remembered Zion. So we can date this psalm a little bit, can't we? When is it? It's after or during the exile, yeah, or after the exile, yeah. So after 586. So again, the Psalms were written over hundreds of years. A collection like a snowball that you roll to the ground to build a snowman, kept getting added to and added to and added to. On the willows there we hung up our lyres. The psalm is composed about the singers of the psalms. Okay? By the waters of Babylon we sat and wept. We remembered the city that was destroyed. We hung up our lyres, that is the instrument that we use to praise God. For there our captors, the Babylonians, required us songs. For our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. Sing us something from your home, people. Okay? And then they respond, how shall we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Why right hand? If you're a singer, what do you do with your right hand? You pluck the instruments, okay? So may my right hand wither, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth, which means, so I can't sing. My right hand wither, may my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. And then comes a line that comes like it comes from the book of Obadiah. Remember Obadiah was down Edom. Remember, Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem, when they said, raise it, down to its foundations. O daughter of Babylon, you devastator, happy shall he be who requites you with what you have done to us. Happy shall be the one who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rock.
FYI, 672 is the setting of this. There's also another setting of
672.
Yeah. There's another more contemporary one, I think by Hogan, but that's not in this.
Sure enough. Okay, I don't know it, so
Why don't we sing it? It's so
I don't know it. But you see the text, by the waters of Babylon we shall cry, we shall rest and remember Zion. What don't you find in the psalm? What's not there?
the smashing of
No smashing babies. Which is a great segue. It's the appropriate segue to the next kind of lament psalm, which is a curse in psalm. And so at the end of Psalm 137, we have this wish that God would seek vengeance on their enemies, God's enemies. which raises, and there's a chunk, there are a number of psalms of this nature. In the liturgical use of the psalms, editing has taken place. Like Paul Tate in that setting did not set that verse. That reflects, I think, in one sense, an appropriate, but maybe also an overly cautious squeamishness. We've kind of tried to kind of like paper over the harshness of human emotion. Let's go back to the yellow page. I say, now I'm wrong because there was one setting at 137, but by and large there are not many settings of lament psalms in this hymnal. What does that say? In any hymnal, frankly, what does that say about us as Americans? We like happy songs. Yes, because we're used to being happy. We are not facing Russian invaders. We're not facing drought. Oh yeah, okay, COVID, and yes, people do die, but we don't. Which is a way to critique our worship. Now you can say, well, we praise God, yes, but in some sense the Psalms are more real because they bring every emotion. But the editors of hymnals and the Liturgy of the Hours has kind of cut those out. Because, and I understand why. Because, again, I would say the editors of the Psalter, in the Liturgy of the Hours, and at Mass, they're people who grew up, who were born in or after World War II, Korean conflict, Vietnam, the whole 60s thing. And so I think, and that's when all that work of editing the lectionary was done in the 60s. And so I think there was a squeamishness of seeming to give people rhetoric that they could use. Let's go and kill them because God's on our side.
Well, but don't you think it's also because, our church is primarily white men? I'm just naming it. I think...
No, I think women have more to blame than men.
But I
honestly, men are very happy to fight.
But from the African American experience, I think songs of lament, or even in America.
No, we're on to cursing now.
Oh, cursing.
We're on to cursing. I made that segue. Sorry, but in general, but you're right. Their minorities have a lot to complain about. But again, white Catholic America, we've arrived. We've arrived. And we don't like. I said it earlier when we read 2nd Isaiah. How many contemporary song texts, not so much today anymore, but in the 60s, the 70s and 80s, were composed on the idea that we're in exile and God is going to come in. I said, we're a sad bunch in the sense that we're really on top of the world, but we're feeling sorry for ourselves. Okay, but we do not, as you're right, as white Americans, lament has not been part of our repertoire in the last generation or two. Now, go back to our ancestors, they have to lament about.
Well, one in the secular world, there were a lot of suicides where they found in the old days the record was playing, and the same record was in a disproportionate number of suicides. I don't remember the name of the song.
Don't worry, be happy?
Older. Because of that, there was back in the 50s or 60s or something, there was a push to outlaw that record because they didn't want people committing suicide. So get rid of that evil, horrible, bad.
Boy, I can't think of songs in the 50s being, because it was like. You some research. We want to know what that song was. But I just point out that our culture is not one that generally, get over it. People get over it. If you're sad, if you lost somebody or something, get over it. Well, it's our phrase we say, get over it. Huh? We don't let people live in lament too well.
Well, and I think the interesting thing, this is, it was a couple weeks ago, it was in the New York Times, pretty much, front page or featured. I think our younger generation in coming through, not to equate that some ways, they could probably relate more to Lament than, like, I
Sure.
mean, I was an eighties child. You're right, it was great. We didn't have any worries, but I think that acknowledging that our younger people, our young adults, our teens that are coming up, there is a lot of that. And to just say, I think that sometimes as a society we do say, oh, it's all good. Pull yourself up here. Well, that's not the reality that we face right now.
The name of the song, Gloomy Sunday.
Gloomy Sunday. Who can sing it?
Composed by Rizo Cerez in 1933.
Oh my, it's older than you thought. Gloomy Sunday. All right.
Oh, well, we all play this.
It does say open,
Don't. All right. So, let's move on. Cursing, we'll read a couple of them, but the bigger challenge is what to do with these. Again, the lectionary texts, Liturgy of the Hours, the Sunday Mass, or the Mass lectionary, by and large, skirts over them. There's a ton of them. A ton of Psalms that have a few verses. Look at Psalm 139. You know 139. 139. O Lord, you search me and know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down. You are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, Lord, you know it altogether. Verse 7. Where shall I go from your spirit? Where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in shade, oh, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, your right hand shall hold me. So it's a beautiful, beautiful psalm. But look at the end. Verse 19. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God, and that men of blood would depart from me, men who maliciously defy thee, who lift themselves up against thee for evil. Do I not hate them that hate you, O Lord? Do I not loathe them that rise up against you? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them my enemies. Then it flips again. Search me, God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts. And see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So, by and large, it's a lovely, beautiful psalm, but it ends with a bit of cursing. Now, again, I'm arguing that we shouldn't whitewash the Bible or whitewash our attitude in faith. Remember, maybe I didn't. I'm thinking about somebody else. When you're confronted, but you won't hear those verses in Psalm 139. They're not in the Liturgy of the Hours. The ones about they're not there, and they're not done in the Mass when it comes up in Mass. And so instead, we can sing, Yahweh, I know you are near, which is that's a setting of 139. Okay, but they got that by cutting out the parts that are. So how do we deal with them? Well, several ways, I think. First, recognize that the world is not in order, that there is injustice in the world. The danger is when we think we know what to do with the unjust versus leaving it to God to do something to the unjust. Second way of thinking about it is, well, maybe I'm in a pretty, golden place right now, but there are people for whom this is a problem. You talk about minorities, you talk about people who are right now fighting a disease or living with Lou Gehrig's disease, or who are migrating or fleeing Russia, Ukraine. For them, it becomes a source, a way of expressing their emotion and bringing it to God in this lament form. It's because a cursing psalm is simply a kind of lament. Another way to do it is how would Jesus have prayed? Psalm 137, where it says, take their babies' heads and crash them against the rocks. Well, did Jesus have any real human enemies? He had people who hated him. I get that. Did he have people that he cried out to God to punish? He's the one who said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. But I can imagine Jesus, this is not my idea, it's from a teacher of mine, that how would Jesus have prayed a cursing psalm? Who are the children that need to have their heads bashed against the rocks? Well, the children of my anger, the children of my lust, the children of my need to be number one, the offspring of my vices. So to personify my vices, that they're the ones that need to be defeated, that I call on God. Because the danger has always been that we say we're God's people, and so God's on our side, and anybody who harms us must be God's enemy too. And so we use this, and we use it, that fires us up to destroy people. Well, just think about our political culture right now. Huh? God's on my side, I can do this, I can do that, So there's danger. I mean, again, the pendulum swings. In the wake of the World War II and Vietnam, the church kind of cut out the cursing parts of the Psalms. And I think, and again, I'm by myself, I'm not going to bring it back, but I think there's a sense that, maybe we got to find another way of handling it. We should find another way of handling that. The Liturgy of the Hours is going through a redo. I don't know how long it will take. It could take years yet. Maybe I hope it takes 20 years because I'll be dead. And we'll have to buy them. The Bibles will be very expensive. It's 4 volumes.
Yeah.
But in any case, that question has to be faced again. Or we can pray the psalm for people who are feeling that. You might be feeling up today, but there are people who are feeling down. So you pray for them. And this psalm with that curse is to help us remember them. This is what I guess would propose, things that we need to be careful.
I do have concern about, I like Psalm and I read it and I feel it's real. It's not like something conjured up.
Yeah.
But if they do want God to help them in this own life, and then Jesus came, somehow this world is bleak because you are going somewhere else. So I don't know, is Jesus has done something that I sometimes Christianity somehow thinks that, well, here is not somewhere you're going to get what you want. You have to go somewhere else.
Right.
So how do you, I don't know, that's always to me just.
But again, the cursing psalm is the voice of the people who have been stomped on. And we need to hear the voice. It may not be us. We might be the stompers. The danger comes in, though, when we use those words and say, well, if God's not going to act. Again, the Psalter expects God to do the acting, not us to do the acting. Okay? And you're right. These are all Old Testament texts. And again, they had no expectation of life beyond this life. And the resurrection, hope has changed that for us. We live in a different world as Christians than that. But we have to deal with this reality because it's part of our tradition too. Yes?
I will have to say, those Psalms helped me when I was so sick with COVID, because those were the Psalms I prayed. And I slept with the lights on because I didn't want to die alone. Those Psalms really, it resonated. And so doing my Liturgy of the Hours and some of those pieces in there.
But I think what you were doing though is you were objectifying them as the disease was your enemy, not a person was your enemy.
Right.
That's the danger is when we don't clarify that. Look at some, yes.
Isn't this kind of a cousin to our discomfort with the bloodthirstiness of some of the Old Testament?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We're beyond that. We're not that kind of people. Ha! Psalm 109 is the mother of all cursing psalms. 109. It's a lament, again, an individual lament, but it's a cursing psalm. Be not silent, O God of my praise, for wicked and deceitful mouths are opened against me. See the contrast? God is not talking, but people who hate me are talking. Okay? They beset me with words of hate and attack me without cause. In return for my love, they accuse me, even as I make prayer for them. So they reward me evil for good and hatred for my love. Now, there's two ways of reading the next section. That it continues to be the speakers calling down trouble on their enemy, or is it the speaker quoting the kind of talk that their enemy makes against them? You see? Is it the speaker cursing his enemy, or is it the speaker quoting the way the enemy talks about them? Now, it's still a cursing psalm, but if it's the prayer praying it this way, it makes it even darker. Appoint a wicked man against him. Let an accuser bring him to trial. When he is tried, let him come forth guilty. Let his prayer be counted as sin. May his days be few. May another seize his... It's just a series of curses. May his children be fatherless, and his wife a widow. May his children wander about and beg. May they be driven out of the ruins they inhabit, and so on. It's just a whole series of curses. Verse 17. He loved to curse. Let curses come on him. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. He did not like blessing. May it be far from him. 20. May this be the reward of my accusers from the Lord, of those who speak evil against my life. Be thou, O God, my Lord, deal on my behalf for your name's sake. So that's the motivation. For your name's sake. If you let me get beat up by them, and they know I worship you, people are going to say, well, what kind of God is that? I'm not going to worship Yahweh because he's a real loser. Okay? And so it is a psalm of lament. It's in specific a cursing psalm. Okay? Another subsection of this part of the Psalter are penitential psalms. There are 7 of them. If you want to know them, here they go. 6, 32, 38, 51, 102, 130, 143. Again, 6, 32, 38, 51, 102, 130, 143. These 7, this subgroup of lament psalms, has been called penitential by Christians because they recognize that what's out of joint with the world is me. I'm what's out of joint with the world. And that's why bad things happen. And so the liturgy, particularly during Lent or a penance service, will use these a lot. And they were really a big part of medieval devotion. Okay? Because the idea of people's sense of sinners was very intense. Let's look at Psalm 6. Okay, it's short, and it's kind of a model of a penitential psalm. O Lord, rebuke me not in your anger, nor chasten me in your wrath. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am languishing. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are troubled. My soul also is sorely troubled. But you, O Lord, then it seems as if the guy lost his strength. Oh, how long was going to go on? It's how long? Turn, Lord, save my life. Deliver me for the sake of your chesed. For in death there is no remembrance of you. In Sheol, who can give you praise? Again, I point out, in the Psalms, there is no expectation of life beyond this life. I am weary with my moaning. Every night I flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with my weeping. My eye wastes away because of grief. It grows weak because of all my foes. Depart from me, you workers of evil, for the Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. The Lord has heard my supplication and accepts my prayer. All my enemies shall be ashamed and sorely troubled. They shall turn back and be put to shame in a moment. Now, what makes it a penitential psalm are those opening verses. It's God who is chastening, is punishing the prayer. And the assumption is that God is only punishing the prayer because the prayer has it coming. So it's kind of a light penitential psalm. Okay? Look at 130. You'll be very familiar with, I think, from Lent. Psalm 130. Out of the depths of chaos, huh? The depths, the abyss. Everything here is orderly on the earth, but down below it's a mess. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplication. If you, O Lord, should mark our faults, our iniquities, Lord, who could stand? But there is forgiveness with you, that you may be feared. I wait for the Lord. My soul waits, and in his word I hope. My soul waits for the Lord, more than watchmen for the morning. So, you know, it's your job is you have to be on the town wall all day all night walking back and forth until the sun comes out. And you're so waiting for the sun to come up so you can go home. Huh? So my soul waits for the Lord, more than watchmen for the morning. More than watchmen for the morning. O Israel, hope in the Lord, for with the Lord there is steadfast love, and with him is plenteous redemption. He will redeem Israel from all his iniquities. Israel individual, I guess, not Israel, well, not God. It's not God's iniquities, it's his people's iniquities. In the hymnal, let's look at number 88. You may or may not know this. 87? Okay. No, 88.
Oh, 87, oh, good.
Yes, 87 too. Well, 80, yeah. But maybe 87 one might know. With the Lord. No, I don't know this at all. But the one I think is the drunkest one. See, the flows of redemption. But both of these are settings of Psalm 180. Maybe look at 961. That for sure I know. I can sing. You can sing with me. 961. This is an oldie. Remember your love and your faithfulness, O Lord. Remember your people and have mercy on us, Lord. Look at verse 2. If you dwelt, O Lord, upon our sinfulness, then who could stand? But with you there is mercy and forgiveness, and a guiding hand. Remember your love and your faithfulness, O Lord. Remember your people and have mercy on us, Lord. Another subset of lament psalms are called Psalms of Confidence, because the emphasis, if Psalm 88, the emphasis is on, oh my gosh, God, everything sucks. These Psalms, the sense of trust in God, the expression of trust has become so strong that it dominates. But it's a lament. It's calling for help, but with an emphasis on confidence in God. The most famous of these is Psalm 23. Again, you know it to death, but have you ever read it? I mean, carefully. It really wasn't so much a favorite of the church until the 19th century. And I say the church, I mean, it's the Protestant church that made Psalm 23 a big deal. And we have kind of caught up with it. So you know it, but do you ever pay attention? Like the Lord's Prayer, you know it, but if I asked you to start in the middle, could you do that? Probably not, because you've learned it A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. You can't start in the middle. The Lord, Yahweh, is my shepherd, therefore I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Now, all that is comforting. It is very comforting. But what does it imply? It implies difficulty and trouble. The middle section emphasizes that. Even though I walk, right now, I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. So I'm there right now, but I fear no evil, for you are with me. Even in the darkness, you are with me. Your rod and your staff, a shepherd guides his flock with these things. They comfort me. They fend off the enemy, and they comfort me. So the first image is God as shepherd. You can also argue God as ruler, because you saw in the prophets, shepherd was a kind of a metaphor for a king. Okay? Ezekiel lays into the shepherds of Israel who aren't shepherding their flock, but are eating them up. Huh? So it's God as ruler, God who directs me. Okay? Even when I'm in a dark place. So it's not just I'm in a good place now and I remember the dark place. No, as I read the psalm, you're in a dark place now. And you remember, you have confidence in the shepherd. And the second half of the psalm reflects of God as host. Okay? You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness follow me all the days of my life, and I will return in the house of the Lord forever. Now, shepherding was a male job. Hosting was a female job. So one could argue domestic is indoors. And that's how the ancient Israel divided the outside tasks and the inside tasks. So it's not a heavily female identification, but God as ruler or shepherd, God as host. Okay? But it's a psalm of confidence when I am in trouble. Psalm 91, let's look at it briefly. Again, it's a lament, but with an emphasis on confidence. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High, who abides in the shadow of the Almighty, will say to the Lord, my refuge, my fortress, my God in whom I trust.
I mean, that's
Okay,
what it goes as.
exactly. It's the verse. Well, it's the opening verse of On Eagle's Wings. Okay, so that's why. And think how much that song now is totally associated with funerals. People don't want to sing it sometimes because it makes me think of my mother, or it makes me think of my child. Okay? He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. But again, the point is right now you're not there. But he is the kind of God who does this, and that we take confidence in that. Verse 9. Because you have made the Lord your refuge, the Most High your habitation, no evil shall befall you, no scourge come near you. For he will give his angels charge of you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you dash your foot against a stone. Now, all of that is being spoken by a friend or a priest or a prophet to the person who is hurting. And then in verse 14, God speaks. You know, it would be nice if, like in a modern printing of a play, it would say who the actor is, because you'd catch it a lot sooner. But the actor here has changed. The first half of the first 2/3 of the poem, God is spoken of in the third person. He will do this for you. He will pick you up. He will protect you. But after verse 14, it becomes God who speaks. Because he cleaves to me in love, I will deliver him. He is now the hurt person. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. So it's a good thing to notice the Psalms sometimes are like little plays. This is a little one-act play with two voices, three characters. There's the person who's, been smitten. There's the friend who consoles. And then there's God who speaks. Okay? Other Psalms work that way. Would that the text kind of outline that? But that's why you read your footnotes.
I do have some misunderstanding here. For instance, when I read the Psalm sometimes as a Christian.
As you should.
But here, Psalm 23.
Oh, we're going back. Okay.
Yeah, you just said, it says, he stores my soul. What does that mean, soul here? And also, I shall dwell in the house of the Lord. What is that?
House of the Lord. For the author, the house of the Lord is the temple.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. I'm going to hang out around God's house.
See, I was thinking as a
Well, again, and we can read the Psalms that way too. I mean, when you hear Psalm 23 at a funeral, you're not thinking, well, my mother's body's going to stay here in church. No, because it gets a spiritual meaning of God's house above.
right.
But for the author, it was the temple.
Okay.
And the soul is in the Jewish mind is your life breath, your nefesh. It's not a Greek idea of body and soul. It's your nefesh. It's who you are. It's your life. So you raise a good point, and then you go back to a homework thing. At least the people who do homework I corrected. Just to point it out to you, and again, you slipped up a few of you. It was about the Song of Songs. It said, pick a verse that you can interpret three ways. You can interpret it as God speaking to his people, in the plural. And the same verse can be God speaking to you. And it can be lover and lovey on the level of human sexuality. What some of you did is chose three different verses, which is, I give you partial credit, but the whole point of the exercise was a single verse in the Song of Songs can be read in each of those ways. It's, again, I spoke about, to Uni's question, the house of the Lord, the guy who wrote this, he's thinking about the temple. But again, we are Christian. And we believe we have a hope in life eternal. And so the house of the Lord becomes something different, bigger. But it doesn't deny that it was initially the temple. So we have to learn to read it. It's richer. It doesn't have one meaning. It can have a single text can have multiple meanings. And that Song of Songs question was really a great question if you caught what it was asking you to do. Again, if you didn't, it's okay. You dug around, you found a Song of Song verse that said it. But what it was really trying you to do is to look back at the same verse and hear it now, not talking to God, but talking to your spouse, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, or God speaking to his people, the whole nation.
Do you have a a verse that you would suggest for that? Because I really didn't see that anywhere. It was
Any of them. Any of them.
Yeah,
Because that's the tradition, not the Song of Songs, the tradition of Bernard of Clairvaux and John of the Cross is that the Song of Songs is really about God's love for us. And there's a verse, well, again, any verse you can do if you think about it. So the settings are human love, God and me, God and all of us. And by a certain way of kind of squinting, you can place it in that setting. Okay?
So the question was in here, is David living life after death?
For this psalm,
Yeah, Psalm 6:1.
okay, not Psalm 23. You know, back to Psalm 6 you're going.
No, I know, but there was a question that there were among us, some who believe that he believes in life after death.
Yes.
Some didn't. So.
In your group.
again, yeah, in our group. So if I think about David as just a representative of his culture, he shouldn't. But if I see him as an individual, it's possible.
Yes. Yes, but the question was even just trying to get in your face to remind you, as Christians, we tend to drag the New Testament into the Old Testament. And that's okay only after you let the Old Testament be the Old Testament. Then you read the second level. Because we can read it like this, Psalm 23, or Psalm 91. In a funeral, it takes a different setting because of our belief in eternal life that the original authors likely didn't have. But that's okay. But just be clear. Be clear that the original author didn't see it that way. Same with Song of Songs. It's not clear to me that the original author thought he was writing a poem about divine human love. I think he was right when he describes her hair is like this and her breasts are like this, he's thinking about human love. But it's possible to read it spiritually in this other way.
So, I need clarification. Did David believe in an afterlife or not?
I'm old, but I'm not that old to know for sure. But I would generally say no. Again, the scholarship debates this. I mean, really, it's a question with no right answer.
Okay.
It wants you to think. But right now, I mean, when I went to school 25 years ago, scholarship was, that they would be very clear, the first signs of Jews believing in life beyond this life was about 175 BC.
Is that
Maccabees. Okay?
So,
175 BC. That's the first evidence. But there's been a pushback, mainly by Jewish scholars, who propose that things like the dry bones of Ezekiel, I don't see it. I'm just saying, I don't see it. But this is how scholarship works. It's a back and forth, a push and shove. But still, most again, 30 years ago, no question. Now there's still like, oh well, look at it this way or look at it that way. So.
Okay, question, what about
You're not in this
sects
class,
of
are you?
Judaism, Pharisees?
Yes, but there aren't Pharisees until after
Right, okay.
Maccabees.
Fair enough. Okay, yep.
that's what I
You made his day.
You did.
Because I do remember.
The
you saying
divisions
that.
in Judaism don't begin to surface until after the Maccabees. No, next year we read Maccabees. And all that is not clear will be made distinct.